Welcome people, this is your host Richard with another marvellous video. With every passing episode, the fourth season of The Boys is proving to be just as diabolical and twisted as the fans expect the anti-superhero drama to be. The fifth episode, titled Beware the Jabberwork, My Son, takes things up a notch, and it raises the bar when it comes to overwhelming the viewers with a very eventful narrative and lots of graphic violence. The stage is all set for the final few episodes of the season, and it's gonna be a mouth-watering climax to build up for the upcoming season. In this video, we'll take you through a detailed breakdown of the episode and also explore the episode ending and its implications.
Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
What are the consequences of Homelander's vengeful killing spree? The violent outburst of Homelander in the previous episode was an unforgettable moment, and we were eager to find out what he'd do next. After heading back to the Vought facility where he was raised through torture and experiments, Homelander slaughtered every single employee in a bloody rampage, and there were hints that he'd lost his mind completely. Surprisingly enough, the fifth episode begins with a very different side of Homelander, where he's back to his composed and scheming demeanor. He attends a major Comic-Con-like event called V52 Expo, and the other members of the Seven are also in attendance. Cameron, Coleman, and Deep host the show, and Homelander seems to be lost in his thoughts on the sidelines. Even Sister Sage trying to cheer him up doesn't evoke much of a reaction, and we get to see precious little of Homelander in this episode, except for some crucial interactions with Ryan and a final showdown, which we'll come to later.
Hugh?
How does Hughie's father handle the Compound V? We were all curious to find out how the Compound V would affect Hugh Sr., and the first scene with Hughie and his mother Daphne gathered around his father puts the concerns to rest temporarily. Hughie asks his father if he's feeling some strange sensation in his body now that he's regained consciousness, but Hugh claims that he's perfectly fine and feeling like he never even had the stroke in the first place. They even have a nice little family moment filled with emotional discussions about Hugh wants to visit so many places around the world. Daphne's apologetic about her disappearance for all these years, and finally, the family seems to be at peace with each other. Daphne even admits to Hughie that she injected the Compound V in Hugh's IV drip, and she did so because she couldn't bear the thought of Hughie losing another parent that he dearly loves. However, the true effects of Compound V are visible a little later in the episode. It all starts with Hughie unable to find his father in his room, and he looks around the hospital with his mother searching for him. Their search ends in one of the adjacent rooms where they find Hugh standing motionless, and the next scene confirms our worst fears about the effects of Compound V on him. A bloodied corpse is lying on the floor, and Hugh can be seen holding onto one of his organs. He's clearly the one responsible for the killing, and when a nurse walks in and sounds an alarm, Hugh panics and in an attempt to run away, simply phases through the walls. The bloody chaos continues because he runs into a patient in another room and stops after ripping him apart accidentally. It's a gruesome sight as Hugh stands helplessly in between the destroyed body, and Hughie and Daphne fail to control him. The entire hospital's busy evacuating people, and an emergency alarm has been sounded following the massacre. To make matters worse, Hugh's also lost his memory to some extent. He thinks that Hughie is still 11 and back at home, and he has no recollection of his reconciliation with Daphne. In this condition, when he sees Daphne, he's furious about her leaving them, and Hughie and his mother barely manage to get away as a cop falls prey to Hugh's vicious attack. He seems to have the ability to phase through matter, and he also has superhuman strength to rip through human bodies with his bare hands. Can Hughie find a cure for his father's condition before it's too late?
Tell your friends about the deal we made?
Wait, what does that mean?
Said he'd steal all the files you had on me if I gave.
Why did the boys go ahead with Butcher's plan once again? We've already seen in the earlier episodes that the boys are far from the coordinated team that we've seen in earlier seasons. Each of the members is dealing with issues of their own, and this episode highlights their divided state even more. Starlight's reeling from the relentless verbal campaign launched against her by Firecracker, and the fact that Hughie is away with his father doesn't make things any easier for her. Frenchie is in great distress after confessing to Colin that he murdered his entire family back in the day. Now that Colin's away, Frenchie's grieving and clueless about his next move. Meanwhile, we see another appearance of Joe Kessler, and he convinces Butcher to take the lead and get his hands on the Supe-killing virus. He alleges that the boys have gone soft and are dysfunctional, and he also reminds Butcher that time is running out for him. He heads back to the boys and tells them all about the virus that apparently kills Supes. He reveals how some scientists at Godolphin University came up with this virus, which latches onto the bloodstream of Supes and destroys them. The virus is harmless for humans, but anyone with Compound V in their system is doomed. It's still not powerful enough to kill Homelander, but it's surely potent enough to take down Victoria Neuman. Butcher has a plan to settle the scores, and he intends to get his hands on the Supe-killing virus. The boys seem to have no choice but to go ahead with the plans because it seems like the only plausible way ahead. In return, Butcher simply asks for a presidential pardon because they'd require it for the mission, and we soon find out why.
It's an absolute wonder to me that you've all managed to live this long.
Enter Stan Edgar. How the mission to retrieve the Supe-killing virus ends in a disaster. It turns out that the presidential pardon was to release Stan Edgar from his imprisonment because the boys will need him in order to get to the virus. Butcher strikes a deal with Stan by promising him the custody of Zoe Neuman when it's all over. Stan, who initially refuses the offer, gives in when he learns how Compound V has turned Zoe Neuman into a monstrous soup with a tentacle-filled mouth. They head to Stan's farmhouse, which he believes would be the perfect place for Victoria Neuman to conduct her secret business with the virus. However, the operation, which they thought would be simple, soon turns into a violent bloodbath. The boys, a couple of CIA agents, and Stan Edgar find out that the place has been used for various experiments, and many animals have been injected with Compound V and Temp V. Butcher releases one of the surviving hamsters who's been injected with Temp V, but Frenchie finds out that the Supe-killing virus has been taken away. Suddenly, they all start bleeding from their noses, and in walks Victoria Neuman. She's not too happy about how the boys have roped in Stan Edgar to work behind her back, and she threatens to blow everyone's heads off if they don't comply. Starlight tries to use her powers against her, but for some reason she falls short and the plan fails. Stan convinces his adoptive daughter to refrain from unnecessary violence because it'll simply blow her cover, and they all go ahead exploring the facility further. Stan and Victoria have an intense conversation where they both blame each other for the circumstances, but somewhere their original bond still remains strong. However, all the healthy banter is soon cut short when they open a chicken coop and discover a disfigured corpse inside. All of a sudden, a few of the souped-up chickens attack the group, and one of the chickens blasts through the body of a CIA agent. Once again, Starlight fails to use her powers in this crisis, and the shots fired by MM and Frenchie do no damage to the chickens. Just as one of the chickens is about to attack Stan, Victoria makes it explode, and everyone runs out of the shed and locks it behind them, with some of the rampaging chickens still inside. As they walk around the property exploring further, Starlight loses her cool once again when Victoria Neuman instigates her with talks about her troubled persona and power loss. Meanwhile, Butcher spots the hamster that he'd released earlier, and a strange tentacled creature blasts out of its body. Butcher smashes the creature to its death, but we can't help but wonder if Butcher also has a similar entity inside him. It's probably the sentient entity inside his body that enabled him to kill Ezekiel earlier, and we might get to see a lot more of his dormant powers in the upcoming episodes. The next attack on the team is as ghastly as it is bizarre. They walk up to a couple of souped-up bulls, but they realize that a bigger threat is on the prowl when a fleet of flying flesh-eating sheep arrives. They rip the bulls apart in seconds, and soon the sheep turn their eyes on the humans. Everyone runs desperately into a shed and locks themselves in, and the ferocious sheep can be heard screeching outside. These sheep fly incredibly fast, have sharp fangs for teeth, and they feed on flesh to sustain themselves. Meanwhile, they find Samir inside the shed, a scientist who worked for Vought. He also turns out to be the one who fathered Zoe Neuman, and he tells everyone about how the experiments went wrong when the animals went rogue. The Supe-killing virus is all gone, except for one last dose left with Samir. It can only be transmitted through bodily fluid, such as blood, saliva, and semen, and the boys come up with an idea to escape the violent sheep. One of Samir's teammates is lying dead in the shed, and they inject his corpse with the virus and throw it outside for the sheep. They hope that the sheep will drop dead after consuming the flesh contaminated with the Supe-killing virus, and thankfully, it works out for them. However, the boys don't get their hands on the Supe-killing virus, and in all the chaos and confusion that follows, Samir goes missing mysteriously. One of his severed limbs is found on the scene, and Stan Edgar is sent back to jail because he failed to fulfill the deal, which said that the boys should have access to the virus. The only loophole that we found in the entire saga of bizarre souped-up animal encounters is why Victoria Neuman didn't use her powers to make the heads explode. If her powers could work on a chicken, well, surely they could work on the sheep as well. Well, it could be that the sheep were simply too fast and too many in numbers for her to effectively take them out, but it still seemed a bit strange that she didn't even try.
Please forgive me.
He's still lying.
I agree.
Are the equations between Ryan and Homelander changing again? The relationship between Ryan and Homelander is so volatile that it's extremely tough to predict which way the things are moving. The previous episode suggested a glitch in the father-son duo, but it all seems back to normal in this episode. They're first seen together when Adam Bork is delivering a pitch for an upcoming project featuring Ryan, but the young Soup doesn't appreciate the idea. Homelander supports him in his decision and tells him that he's actually happy about Ryan making his own decisions. Ryan even tells him about what he actually wants, which is to help people in real life and not in make-believe sets, and Homelander approves of this as well. Clearly, Homelander is somewhat desperate to improve his relationship with his son, and it might take things in a different direction very soon. We get a hint of the side effects of being around Homelander very soon when Ryan spots a young woman feeling uneasy around Adam Bork. He wants to punish Adam for his inappropriate behavior that made her uncomfortable, and Homelander quite enjoys how his son goes through with his intrusive thoughts. I mean, isn't that what Homelander's all about? The master of intrusive thoughts? Well, Ryan makes the young woman slap Adam publicly after having him apologize to her, and the satisfactory grin on his face raises the concerns that he might soon give in to the dark side of power. This would mean that Butcher's plan to rehabilitate him and take him away from Homelander might be jeopardized, and the boys would have to deal with two very powerful Supes in the form of father-son duo
I'm scared.
Hey, Dad, it's okay. Hey, I'm right here. I'm right here.
The tragic end of Hughie's father. Is he really dead? This is probably the most disappointing moment in the episode, and it's also a bit of a tearjerker. When Hughie's father goes completely out of control, Hughie realizes that he has to come up with something to put an end to this mayhem. He tells his mother that Frenchie has taught him a lot about drugs, and he cooks up a potion that's supposedly strong enough to take down a rampaging Hugh. When he corners Daphne and is on the verge of killing her, Hughie makes an impactful and emotional appeal to him. It helps him regain his composure momentarily, and he also gets his memories back. He agrees to be injected with the potion, and it works as Hugh slips into the cold hands of death. It's an emotional wrecker as Hughie and Daphne are in tears, but Hughie knows that there's no other way out. What concerns us more, however, is the fact that someone as powerful as Hugh turned out to be after being injected with Compound V can't possibly die from a drug injected in his system. If such a drug exists, why are they bothering with the Supe-killing virus in the first place? Although it does seem like a decisive death, we'd ask you to hold on to your horses on this one because Hugh's father might still be a surprise package waiting to be unleashed. He may have slipped into a temporary coma, and later, and if he learns to control his powers, he can be an asset to Hughie in his fight against Homelander and his minions. This might seem unlikely at the moment, but let's not rule this out completely. Ashley and A-Train's brilliant conspiracy. How long will this work? We all know that A-Train is neck-deep in trouble after stealing Compound V from Homelander. Earlier, he even stole the footage from Vought that proved the innocence of the Starlighters accused of murder, and Sister Sage is too smart to deviate from the truth for too long. A few interactions between Sister Sage and A-Train suggest that she's already suspecting him, but she's yet to find a decisive proof against him. Meanwhile, Ashley was caught by A-Train while she vandalized Homelander's toilet secretly, and the two find a way to benefit each other. It all starts with A-Train confessing about his betrayal to Ashley, and he warns her that if his cover is blown, he'd go down taking Ashley down with him. She hesitantly agrees, and we see the aftermath in the climactic moments of the episode. Earlier in the episode, Cameron Coleman refuses to play along with Ashley and their bizarre relationship. He tells her that being removed from her powerful position doesn't make their femdom sessions exciting for him any longer, and he walks away, leaving Ashley in helpless fury. She gets the perfect revenge when she frames him as the leak in the team. Homelander announces his crimes before the 7, and everyone takes turns in beating Cameron to death as a horrified A-Train looks on. It's not clear if he knew about the plan or it was simply Ashley's doing, but it's safe to say that the Superfast Soup is safe for the time being. There's plenty that can still go wrong for Ashley and A-Train, especially with the smartest person in the world keeping an eye on them, and we have to wait and find out how things unfold. Two major twists in the climactic moments of the episode and their implications. Anyone who follows the boys will know that the show never shies away from introducing shocking twists when you're least expecting. A couple of major twists are revealed toward the end of the episode, and the first one involves Victoria Neuman's estranged partner and the father of her daughter, Samir. It seemed quite strange how he disappeared out of nowhere, and the whole thing was made to look like the sheep ate him alive. However, we finally learn that Butcher is the one who orchestrated the entire thing. He chopped off Samir's leg and took him away to a hideout, where he visits him alongside Joe Kessler. The way Samir looks surprised when Butcher is talking to Kessler suggests that we were right in presuming that Kessler is a made-up character inside Butcher's head. He's simply the manifestation of all of his dark thoughts, and Butcher did the whole thing to make sure that Samir now works for him secretly without anyone else knowing about it. He wants to get the Supe-killing virus as fast as possible, and who better than Samir to come up with it once again. The other major twist is also quite unexpected, and we see Victoria Neuman exploding the head of the driver who's taking Stan Edgar back to prison. She leads him out of the vehicle, and surely the genius of Stan Edgar and the power of Victoria will mean that they'll be pulling the strings very soon. It seems like no love is lost between them despite all the misunderstanding, and we expect to see a lot more of the duo in the coming episodes, making life miserable for both the boys and Homelander. Marvelous verdict, a solid entertainer, but a little short on logic. This is a show that requires you to switch off your brain every once in a while, and this episode seems to have quite a few of these moments. There's no denying the fact that the narrative is very exciting, and this is easily the most entertaining episode of Season 4 so far, but there are scenes that don't make sense if you think it through. Hughie's father dying from drugs after being injected with Compound V doesn't add up. Also, Victoria Neuman behaving like a helpless victim when faced with the maniacal sheep also makes no sense, because she could have made lamb curry with her powers by exploding their heads. But everything aside, we thoroughly enjoyed the episode, and we also appreciate the way so much has taken place, leading the way to the perfect closure to yet another jaw-dropping season. Do let us know in the comments below about your thoughts on the episode, and also tell us what you make of the story going ahead.
And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.